Alright guys, hope you're doing well, hope you're all keeping safe. It's been nearly 3 months since Outriders launched on April 1st of this year, and it's been about 2 months since I last played Outriders, for many reasons. With the most recent patch claiming to have made some further improvements to the multiplayer experience, especially the connectivity issues, the crash fixes, as well as other stuff, along with legendary drop rates. I thought this would probably be the perfect time to kind of hop back in and see what's changed and whether I'd be coming back or not. Hopefully you enjoy this one. If you do, drop a like down below, subscribe to stay up to date with all my videos, and let's get into it. The biggest issue I had, and I think most people had with Outriders, was the absolutely awful connectivity issues the game launched with. Constant crashes to dashboard, joining on friends rarely worked and would crash you to the dashboard. I actually played a lot with other YouTubers where this happened to them a lot as well. Joining a random party in any activity rarely connected, and when it did, often those people would be AFK, or you'd have this really kind of laggy experience. On top of those and the server issues, there was UI bugs where your whole kind of UI would disappear, which at first was kind of cool, but then you realize you couldn't do anything. You couldn't open doors, you couldn't go to your map, none of that stuff, so you basically had to re-log, and this happened quite often, and of course the list goes on and on with bugs, glitches, and so much more. I am pleased to announce that in my couple of hours playing, I didn't have one crash to my dashboard, which is already a huge improvement. Logging into the game is still fairly slow, nothing has changed there, but that's kind of a non-issue. The first thing I did, once I did log in, aside from check what legendaries I was given when they did the legendary kind of restoration patch a while ago, was head to matchmaking and join a group for expeditions. First attempt, failed. Back to the login screen. Second attempt, that worked fine, and thankfully there was no lag in that expedition. It runs smoothly, and that was really, really good. Third time, failed, back to login screen, and you know what? it wouldn't have been so bad if it failed in the kind of matchmaking interface, so you could try again immediately. But when it fails, it sends you back to the login screen, and then you have to log back in, and you have to wait, and all that stuff, and it's just really frustrating. The fourth time, matchmaking into the random group, and it worked fine. Again, no lag, really smooth connection, which was great. And I continued to run in kind of random groups with crossplay turned on and off just to test if there was a difference. None of them made any difference to my experience. And for the most part, the matchmaking experience, whilst it wasn't perfect, was 10 times better than it was 2 months ago, which has to be the biggest improvement they've made. You could say it was only a matter of time. You could say, it's a little bit too late, and I completely understand that for sure, but it just feels good to actually matchmake and not have any issues. Also, I didn't encounter any bugs at all. Certainly no glaring ones worth noting, so again, I think that just shows the good job they've done on those bug improvements and those connectivity issues. Right, moving on, and let's talk about expeditions, as that's obviously the main activity in the game. It's the only end game in the game. I'll be honest with you guys here, I was never a huge fan of expeditions in the first place. It's the only end game content, and it's kind of hard for me to come back knowing it's the only end game content and knowing that it's not going to sustain my attention. I'm just not the biggest fan of time trials. With that said, one of the major issues that I had with expeditions was the kick feature for the expedition leader. In fact, I was getting kicked so frequently towards the end of my playing of the game, meaning I was actually unable to get my loot almost all of the time, and in some occasions I wasn't even able to get the drop pod resources because I'd already been kicked to that point. I just had about enough. That was pretty much the straw that broke the camel's back for me. That's ultimately what stopped me from playing. Thankfully, this feature, if you can call it that, has been removed, so no longer can a player kick others towards the end of an expedition. It's actually the final boss encounter. Once you get there, you can't be kicked, I've been told. And this, quite honestly, should never have been a feature in the first place. The dev should know if there's going to be a way to grieve other players, especially when it comes to loot, players are just going to do it. That's just the way it is. You've only got to be a Division fan and have the Dark Zone to know that. But I'm glad they did something about it, even if it took them 2 months to do. Now, one of the biggest changes to come recently, in fact, it was only a couple of days ago, where they increased the legendary drop rates by 100%. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to make this video, because I felt as though enough patches had been put out to the point where I was expecting to feel a difference. I have to admit, I was skeptical of this announcement because the devs never confirmed what the original drop rate was. And based on the overwhelming negativity towards the low drop rates of legendaries over the last couple of months, I thought the devs might have revealed this information so that we could see exactly how it's changing. 100% of 0% is still 0%, is what I was seeing when they said 100% drop chance, and they weren't telling you what the original drop chance was, if you get what I mean. However, I'm pleased to report, having played for a couple of hours, I got about 4, I think it was even more than that, it might have even been 5 or 6 legendary drops, only one of which was a duplicate weapon, although it had a different role, which is what Outriders intended. A patch recently, I'm not sure if it was included in the last patch, but a patch recently stopped you from getting duplicate legendaries, and if it was a duplicate as in it was a weapon or a gear piece, then it would be a different role to one that you've already got, which I think was a really good change. Now that's 5 or 6 more than I ever got in such a short time frame before. And the highest level expedition that I actually played was only a level 11 because I was joining others and just running whatever they wanted to run through. In fact, I think the 2 legendaries that I got actually dropped on level 10, which is a shame because the amount of resources to get that up to the item level that I need is quite a lot. It's a lot of grinding that I'm probably not going to do. But it was still nice to see legendaries drop from the end of expeditions. I actually reached out to Lieutenant Buzz Lightbeer, fellow content creator on YouTube, who many of you will know, and you probably watch his great content, not just on Outriders but other games, of course. I reached out to see if he had seen an increase in the legendary drop rates as well, of which he said yes. So it appears this change has made a noticeable difference, and that's great. Of course, it is all down to RNG, so you are going to get some people where it might not feel like much has changed. In fact, after I saw the legendaries dropped, I went onto Reddit, best place in the world obviously, I went onto Reddit to see what people had said about the legendary drop rates, and there was a couple of people complaining that they didn't see much of a change, and that's going to happen because it's still RNG, but for the overwhelming majority, you are likely going to see a difference in those drop rates. I even had one expedition run that ended with 2 legendary drops at once. Something that never happened to me in the many days that I put into this game within the first 2 weeks of its launch. And some of you might be laughing at that because some of you may have got 3 or 4 legendary drop rates. I think EK1 Gaming got, I think at one point he must have got 3 or 4 legendaries dropping in one expedition run. So having 2 is kind of nothing, but for someone like me who never got that and always struggled to get legendary drops, it was pretty huge, and it felt rewarding, it felt good. All in all, whilst expeditions will never be something that I can truly grind because of its time trial, kind of run as fast as you can play style requirement that really only allows you to play one way, nullifying many builds in the game, it's in a much better state than it was before. Oh, and I forgot to mention as well, I was running a kind of toxic Technomancer build. It's a build that I obviously had 2 months ago. I think it was best DPS build at the time. And although it got some nerfs, I think a while back I believe, I actually felt more powerful than I'd ever been. So I don't know if there's been maybe some nerfs to the NPCs or the enemies in the game. I'm not quite sure what it was, but I felt powerful, and the amount of damage I was doing was, I'm pretty sure it was more than I was ever doing before. Plus, the Broodmother is way less annoying than before. But with that said, the Alpha Perforo, the jumping stun lock leap attack from 400 meters that never misses and exhaustive aggression was still as annoying as ever. So yeah, that I don't miss. I just wish there was a way to kind of mod against the knockback on these things, or just they just need to be looked at. I just think they're just not a fun enemy to fight against. Aside from that, guys, there isn't much more I can say. The way you interact with the UI and your builds and stuff is still slow. Dismantling is still slow, and I don't think that's ever going to change. And that's a little bit of a put-off. But I guess if you like all the other stuff, again, it's kind of one of those things you can overlook. The game is not a live service, so sitting here saying I'd love for them to implement more content on a regular basis is like... It's like asking Massive to tell us why they were going to abandon the Division, right? We're never going to know. Outriders is not a live service game, although the devs have confirmed they will be doing more content, I believe, at a later stage. And that's going to be some way off, though. In the meantime, I think the devs still need to focus on a way to make expeditions less about a time trial and more rewarding for players who maybe want to have a different way of running it. I know that's not going to happen, but I don't quite understand why you would give players the resources to build a tank, but have an end-game activity that only rewards speed and damage. Of course, damage in Outriders equals healing, so you can have a damage-dealing build and be a tank at the same time. I get that. And that's the way the game is intended to be played out. But the issue is, some classes far excel others because they are built for damage where others are not quite so much. And so what that does is you have most people going for one particular class and one particular build, and all the other stuff kind of just wanes in the distance. And I would like for the devs to maybe make some changes to expeditions so that wasn't such an issue in the game. But that's it for today's video, guys. It's unlikely I'm going to be playing Outriders on a daily basis, but the changes made means when I want to play it, when I'm in that mood, I might actually enjoy myself for that brief time rather than leave frustrated. Thanks very much for watching, and until the next one, abck.